Turning to the war in the Middle East now, U.S. President Donald Trump says negotiations between his country and Iran will resume tomorrow. The main focus of those talks will likely be the Strait of Hormuz. Iran closed the critical waterway again yesterday, accusing the U.S. of violating the terms of the ceasefire. The move came after Trump said the American naval blockade of the route would stay in force until a deal is finalized. Both Iran and the U.S. have signaled progress in peace talks recently. Now, despite those signals, the U.S. president has taken to social media to detail an American military operation near the Strait of Hormuz. Trump says a U.S. Navy destroyer intercepted an Iranian-flagged cargo ship attempting to bypass the blockade. His post says in part, quote, "It did not go well for them. The Iranian crew refused to listen, so our Navy ships stopped them right in their tracks by blowing a hole in the engine room." Right now, U.S. Marines have custody of the vessel. Iran state media is reporting that the country is vowing to quickly retaliate. The CBC's Tom Perry has more on the latest developments from the region.
Donald Trump was back on social media on his Truth Social app today with another message about the war in Iran. He said that Iran decided to fire bullets yesterday in the Strait of Hormuz, a total violation of our ceasefire agreement. He describes the ships being fired upon as French and British. Not sure where that comes from. The reports we've heard is that 2 Indian vessels came under fire. He goes on to say, "My representatives are going to Islamabad, Pakistan. They'll be there tomorrow evening for negotiations." And he goes on after that to say, "We're offering a very fair and reasonable deal, and I hope they take it, because if they don't, the United States is going to knock out every single power plant and every bridge in Iran." And then he writes, all in caps, "No more Mr. Nice Guy." So that was the president, again, threatening to blow up power plants and civic infrastructure in Iran if Iran doesn't take a deal. He didn't say in that post who he's sending to Islamabad. A White House spokesperson speaking on background told CBC News the delegation would be led by Vice President J.D. Vance, that Donald Trump's peace envoy Steve Witkoff would also be taking part, as well as his son-in-law Jared Kushner. There was some confusion about that because Trump, in speaking to ABC News, said that Vance wouldn't be going because of security concerns. The White House has since said that Vance, in fact, will be going. Now, we did hear from an Iranian news agency who said that Iran had still not decided whether to send a delegation to this meeting because the Iranians are still very upset about the U.S. naval blockade, stopping ships going in and out of Iran through the Strait of Hormuz. And the strait right now remains effectively closed. Iran said on Friday it would be open, but when the U.S. decided to keep its naval blockade in place, we heard from Iran's Revolutionary Guard today saying that the strait would be closed. And so this meeting, if it does happen, will hopefully sort out what happens in the Strait of Hormuz and maybe decide what's going to happen in this war between Iran and the United States. Tom Perry, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Joining us now is former U.S. Navy lawyer and intelligence officer Sean Hansler to talk about the latest on the Iran war. Sean, thank you so much for being back with us.
Thank you, Diana.
Sean, as we were just mentioning, we read out that social media post by Donald Trump. He says that U.S. forces fired at and seized an Iranian-flagged cargo ship that was attempting to bypass the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. Negotiations are supposed to start in Islamabad on Monday, tomorrow. What could this mean for a potential long-term peace deal?
Yeah, I think that what you've seen going on over the last few days is each side here trying to exert pressure and to try to gain some type of leverage in these hopeful negotiations that might take place tomorrow or the next day. Certainly with the United States today, that is a very lawful mission that they conducted. They certainly have a blockade. They provided warnings to the Iranian-flagged vessel. They then fired shots to stop the vessel. So things that they've done thus far have been lawful. The question now will be, what do they do with the ship? And under this law of naval warfare and prize law, potentially you'll see that ship moved into some type of port, and then the ship and the cargo itself be adjudicated. But this is all part of a larger chess match, I think, that's going on between Iran and the United States to exert pressure on each other and gain leverage in these negotiations.
Let's talk a little bit about the blockade itself. I mean, we know that according to Iranian state media and some of the spokespeople, they have said that that blockade is what's continuing to erode any kind of trust that Tehran might have in the U.S. Tehran has not yet confirmed who and whether they will send somebody to Monday's talks in Islamabad. Do you think the U.S. will keep up the blockade as leverage before these negotiations?
I do, especially after the actions that you saw take place today. One question that I would ask is the Iranian-flagged vessel, which was warned multiple times, it's a state-owned vessel. Who ordered that vessel to actually try to breach the blockade? And if it was the Iranian government or the IRGCN, you have to ask yourself, were they testing the waters here in some type of gray zone-like, unattributable activity to make it look as if the U.S. was the one that was ramping up the escalation here and not the Iranians? So you're right. I don't think trust exists. I don't think it ever existed. And I think it will be difficult, to say the least, for these negotiations to come to any type of conclusion by Wednesday, for sure. I think that's almost impossible. Starting point and point of departure for discussions, maybe, but you're right. There's no trust on either side at the moment.
Tell me, Sean, some of those comments made by President Trump on threatening to blow up the whole of Iran, and previously comments about, ending an entire civilization and so on. These are kind of hard things to forget. I mean, do you think that they impact the legitimacy of stated American military objectives in the region?
I do. I think some of the rhetoric and the language that's been used absolutely has a detrimental impact to legitimacy of U.S. actions in the region. You've seen countless commentators come out and talk about, potential violations of the law of armed conflict were this to happen. That didn't need to take place. There is no question that particular bridges and particular power plants could be lawful military objectives, provided that they provide some type of advantage to the adversary here, in this case, Iran, in its warfighting capability. But you still have to do a collateral damage estimate, which, the civilian collateral damage would not be excessive in light of the military advantage to be gained. These are all kind of lawyerly things that we talk about continuously in the United States military. And this rhetoric just is over the top, and it's unnecessary. It's not helpful. And I do think it degrades the legitimacy of the U.S.'s effort, despite the fact that some of the other things that we're doing are completely lawful.
Tell me a little bit about, the shifting objectives, and who do you believe, and at what point, which one of U.S. objectives should we believe? That it was about controlling Iran's missiles, it was about the enriched uranium supply, nuclear programs. All of these goals, frankly, seem difficult to achieve. Like, do you see a reality where the U.S. and Iran could find a middle ground?
I think each side clearly has their red lines. And I think you hit it on the head that I think the two most important issues in play right now are the future of Iran's nuclear program and the future of the Strait of Hormuz. And I do think that there's room for negotiation with respect to the nuclear program. I think Iran has showed that over the years, and the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action showed that there was a willingness on multiple sides to come to some type of agreement there. The Straits of Hormuz, I also think there's potential room for maneuver, but you've seen the Iranians just put a bill through their parliament that would suggest it will maintain control over the Straits of Hormuz long term, which obviously, is not acceptable to the world community. So I agree with you that objectives have shifted over time, but I think they've narrowed very much so into the nuclear program, the ability to enrich uranium or not, the Straits of Hormuz, free or not, and then, the missile. Iran is going to ramp up over time its production of missiles. So I don't think you're ever going to put an end to their capability of missiles and drones.
Just quickly, while we still have you, Sean, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the international community. Of course, especially the passage of oil through the Strait of Hormuz affects so many other Western countries, including Canada. So many countries have much vested interest in this getting resolved quickly. What role, if any, can the international community play here?
Yeah, I think that's what Iran is counting on. I think that closing the Straits of Hormuz and subjecting the world economy to this pressure and nations around the globe to this pressure is designed to have some of those nations put pressure on the United States to end this sooner rather than later. It's one of the most important, I think, cards they have in their hand here. And that's why I don't think they're letting go of it so easily. But I do think there's a role for the major nations like China to play here to try to persuade the United States back channel that it's in everybody's best interest that this ends sooner rather than later.
Sean, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dana. I really appreciate it.
That was Sean Hensler, former U.S. Navy lawyer and intelligence officer.